My name is Margaret Elizabeth Hayes, and I am 68 years old. For the past 4 months, I have been a prisoner in my own life, locked inside Riverside Nursing Home in upstate New York, labeled as confused, forgetful, a danger to myself. The staff here are kind but misinformed. They believe I need to be here. They believe my daughter Emily saved me from myself. They have no idea that Emily is the one I need saving from. It started on a Thursday afternoon in March, 4 months ago. I remember the exact moment because I had just finished reviewing the quarterly reports for Hayes Heritage Inn, the bed and breakfast I built from absolutely nothing over 4 decades. The numbers were exceptional. Revenue up 23% from last year, 5-star reviews flooding in, bookings solid through the next 18 months. At 68, I was still running 12 rooms, managing 4 full-time staff, and personally overseeing every detail from the hand-stitched quilts to the lavender sachets in each drawer. I was in the sunroom of my home, the Victorian house adjacent to the inn, when Emily arrived unannounced. She had her husband Marcus with her, which immediately struck me as odd. Marcus rarely visited, always claiming work obligations kept him busy in the city. "Mom, we need to talk," Emily said, setting her designer handbag on my grandmother's antique side table without even asking. Her voice had that rehearsed quality, the tone she used when she'd already decided something and was just going through the motions of pretending I had a say. "About what, dear?" I asked, setting down my reading glasses. The afternoon sun caught the dust motes floating through the air, and I noticed Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. That should have been my first warning. "About this place. About you living alone. About your situation." My situation. As if being a successful businesswoman in my late 60s was somehow a problem requiring intervention. "I'm perfectly fine, Emily. The inn is thriving. I have Rosa and the staff checking on me daily. Dr. Patterson just gave me a clean bill of health last month." Emily exchanged a look with Marcus. That look. The one that said they'd discussed this extensively, had planned this conversation, had made decisions about my life without including me in any of it. "Mom, you're getting older. Things happen. What if you fall? What if you forget to turn off the stove? What if—" "I haven't forgotten anything," I interrupted, my voice sharper than intended. "I manage a complex business. I balance books. I supervise staff. I maintain relationships with suppliers across 3 states. My mind is perfectly sound." Marcus finally spoke, his voice that particular blend of condescension and fake concern that made my skin crawl. "Mrs. Hayes, we're just worried. Emily mentioned you seemed confused last time she called. Said you asked her the same question twice about her job." I stared at my daughter. "I asked you about the promotion because you gave me 2 different answers. First you said you got it, then you said you were still waiting." I was trying to clarify, not being confused. Emily's jaw tightened. "See? You don't even remember the conversation correctly. Mom, we've been talking to some specialists. There's a wonderful facility, Riverside Nursing Home. Beautiful grounds, excellent care, activities, other people your age." "Absolutely not." I stood up, my hands trembling slightly, though not from age or weakness. From rage. I am not leaving my home. I am not abandoning the business I built. This conversation is over. But Emily didn't leave. Instead, she pulled out a folder from her bag. "Mom, please just look at these brochures. We've already scheduled a tour for tomorrow. Just come look. If you hate it, we won't mention it again." I should have thrown them out right then. I should have called my lawyer, my doctor, someone who could verify I was completely competent. But I made the mistake so many parents make. I wanted to believe my daughter had my best interests at heart. "Fine," I said wearily. "I'll look. But I'm not promising anything." Emily smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's all we're asking, Mom. Just an open mind. The next morning, I woke feeling strangely foggy. I attributed it to poor sleep, to the stress of the previous day's conversation. Emily arrived at 10 o'clock sharp with Marcus and 2 cups of coffee from my favorite cafe. "Thought you might need this," she said cheerfully, handing me one. "You look tired, Mom. Did you sleep okay?" I took the coffee gratefully. It tasted slightly bitter, but I assumed they'd gotten my order wrong. I drank it anyway, not wanting to seem ungrateful. 20 minutes later, we were in the car heading to Riverside. But something was wrong. My thoughts felt sluggish, disconnected. Words seemed to float just out of reach when I tried to speak. My vision blurred at the edges. "Mom? Are you okay?" Emily's voice sounded far away, tinny, like she was speaking through a tunnel. I don't feel well," I managed to say. "Maybe we should go back." "We're almost there," Marcus said from the driver's seat. "The nurse at Riverside can check you out. They have medical staff on site." I tried to protest, but my tongue felt thick and heavy. The trees outside blurred past in a watercolor wash of green and brown. My head lolled against the window, and I heard Emily's voice, sharper now, talking to someone on the phone. "Yes, we're bringing her in now. She's having an episode, just like we discussed." Very confused, disoriented. "Yes, we have the paperwork. Dr. Morrison signed everything yesterday." Dr. Morrison. I didn't have a Dr. Morrison. My doctor was Dr. Patterson, and I'd seen him 3 weeks ago for my annual physical. Perfect health except for slightly elevated cholesterol, controlled with diet. I tried to speak, to tell them this was wrong, but the words wouldn't form. My eyes grew heavy. The last thing I remember before everything went dark was Marcus pulling into a circular driveway and Emily saying something about mother's best interests and before she hurts herself. When I woke up, I was in a small room with pale yellow walls, industrial carpeting, and a narrow bed with metal railings. A nurse, young, kind-faced, with a name tag reading Sarah, was checking my blood pressure. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Hayes," she said gently. "How are you feeling?" "Where am I?" My voice came out hoarse, confused. "What happened?" "You're at Riverside Nursing Home. Your daughter brought you in this morning. You had a concerning episode, disorientation, confusion, difficulty speaking. But you're safe here now. We're going to take good care of you." "No," I said, trying to sit up. The room spun. "No, there's been a mistake. I need to go home. I have a business to run. I have staff depending on me. Sarah's hand on my shoulder was gentle but firm. "Mrs. Hayes, I need you to stay calm. Your daughter explained everything. She showed us the medical documentation. You've been having episodes of confusion and memory loss. She was worried you'd hurt yourself living alone." "That's not true." I pushed against the bed rail, trying to stand. "I'm perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with my memory. Please, call Dr. Patterson. He's my real doctor. He'll tell you." "Mrs. Hayes, I need you to breathe." Sarah's voice remained calm, professional. "I know this is frightening. Many of our residents feel disoriented when they first arrive. But you're not a prisoner. This is for your own safety. Your daughter loves you very much. She wouldn't have made this decision lightly. But I was a prisoner. And my daughter had made this decision very deliberately, very carefully, very strategically." Over the next several days, I tried repeatedly to explain the truth. I told every nurse, every aide, every person who would listen that I didn't belong here, that I'd been drugged, that my daughter had fabricated the entire situation. But the more I insisted, the more they nodded sympathetically and made notes in my chart about paranoid delusions and resistance to care. Emily visited twice in that first week. Each time, she played the role of devoted daughter perfectly. She brought flowers, spoke in soothing tones, told the staff how difficult this was for both of us, how she'd tried so hard to care for me at home but it had become too much. On her third visit, when we were alone in my room, her mask finally slipped. "You need to stop fighting this, Mom," she said, her voice cold. "The papers are all signed. Dr. Morrison's evaluation is in your file. The nursing home has legal guardianship. You can make this easy or difficult, but the outcome is the same. You're staying here." "Why?" The word came out as a broken whisper. "Emily, why are you doing this?" She laughed, a sharp sound without humor. "Because you were never going to let go, were you? That inn is worth $3.2 million. The property alone is worth $2.8 million. And you were just going to work until you died, probably leave it all to some charity or historic preservation society. Marcus and I have been waiting for 15 years for you to retire, to downsize, to do something reasonable. But no. You just keep going, keep building, keep succeeding, like you're trying to prove something. That inn is my life's work. That inn should be my inheritance." Emily's voice rose, then she caught herself, glancing toward the door to make sure no one heard. She lowered her voice to a hiss. "I'm your only child. Everything you have should come to me. But instead of enjoying retirement like a normal person, you're out there making business deals and expansion plans. Did you really think I'd just stand by and let you give it all away?" The woman standing before me was a stranger. This wasn't the little girl I'd raised, the one I'd worked 3 jobs to put through college, the one whose every need I'd prioritized above my own. "So you had me committed," I said slowly, understanding crystallizing like ice in my chest. "You drugged me, forged medical documents, and had me locked up so you could take control of my assets." Emily shrugged. Dr. Morrison was very understanding when I explained the situation. A simple evaluation, a few signatures. The nursing home did the rest. "And you made it so easy, Mom. Living alone, no close friends, all your time devoted to that damned inn. No one's going to question this. No one's going to rescue you. You're an elderly woman in cognitive decline, and I'm the devoted daughter making impossible choices. That's the story, and everyone believes it." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "I've already filed the paperwork to take over as manager of the inn. Rosa and the staff don't know yet, but they will soon. Marcus is meeting with your accountant tomorrow to transfer signatory authority. By next week, everything will be officially under my control. And you?" She looked around the small room with satisfaction. "You'll be here, safe and sound, getting the care you need." "People will ask about me," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "The staff at the inn. The suppliers. The guests who've known me for years. And I'll tell them exactly what I've told everyone else. That you're unwell. That this was heartbreaking but necessary. That I visit you regularly and you're being wonderfully cared for. Most people will feel sorry for me, actually. Poor Emily, having to make such difficult decisions for her aging mother." She walked to the door, then paused. "Oh, and Mom? Stop telling people you were drugged and kidnapped. It just makes you sound more confused. The staff is documenting everything you say. Every accusation, every paranoid delusion, every time you insist you're fine when clearly you're not. You're building my case for me. Keep it up, and we might have to adjust your medications, make you a little more comfortable." The threat was clear. Comply, or they'd drug me into submission. After she left, I sat on that narrow bed in that yellow room and realized the horrifying truth: my own daughter had sold me into captivity for money. And she'd done it so skillfully, so legally, that no one would believe me if I tried to tell them. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through everything Emily had said. The inn I'd built room by room, renovation by renovation, guest by guest over 4 decades. The historic Victorian property I'd rescued from foreclosure and transformed into a destination worthy of magazine features and travel awards. The staff I'd trained, the standards I'd maintained, the reputation I'd built through relentless attention to detail and genuine care for every single guest. All of it, taken in a single calculated move by the person I'd loved most in the world. By morning, I'd made a decision. If Emily thought I would simply fade away in this place, drugged and docile, she was wrong. I might be 68 years old. I might be locked in a nursing home. But I was still Margaret Hayes, the woman who'd built something from nothing. And I was going to get it all back. But first, I needed paper and a pen. Because sometimes, the most powerful weapon isn't money or lawyers or connections. Sometimes, it's simply the truth, written down where it can't be denied, twisted, or erased. And I was about to write a truth that would expose everything. The days blurred together in Riverside Nursing Home. Breakfast at 7:30, always the same rotation: oatmeal, scrambled eggs, toast. Morning activities at 9, chair yoga, bingo, or arts and crafts designed for people whose cognitive abilities had genuinely declined. Lunch at noon. Afternoon rest time. Dinner at 5. Evening television in the common room. Lights out at 9. It was a routine designed for people who needed structure, predictability, safety. For people whose minds had genuinely slipped away from them. I didn't belong here, and every fiber of my being screamed against it. But I quickly learned that screaming, literally or figuratively, only made things worse. The more I protested, the more the staff exchanged knowing looks and updated my chart. Agitated. Resistant to care. Insists she's being held against her will. Each note built Emily's narrative of a confused woman unable to accept her own limitations. So I stopped fighting. Not because I'd given up, but because I'd realized something crucial: I needed to appear compliant while I figured out how to get free. Sarah, the nurse who'd been there my first day, seemed genuinely kind. She was perhaps 30, with warm brown eyes and a gentleness in her touch that suggested she actually cared about the people in her charge. Not all the staff were like that. Some were simply going through the motions, collecting paychecks. But Sarah saw us as people, not just patients. On my 5th day at Riverside, I asked her a carefully casual question during morning medication rounds. Sarah, do residents here ever write letters? To family or friends? She smiled as she handed me my pills, vitamins, and a low-dose anxiety medication I'd been told was standard for all new residents to help with adjustment. I'd been palming the anxiety medication and spitting it out later. I needed my mind sharp. Of course, Mrs. Hayes. We encourage it, actually. Staying connected with loved ones is important for emotional health. Would you like some stationery? We have some in the activities room. That would be wonderful, I said, swallowing the vitamins but keeping the small yellow pill tucked against my cheek. I'd like to write to some old friends. Let them know I'm settling in. Sarah's smile widened. I think that's a great idea. I'll bring you some paper and envelopes after lunch. Do you need help addressing them? Sometimes the small print can be difficult. No, thank you. My eyesight is still quite good. Better than good, actually. I'd had cataract surgery 2 years ago, and my vision was sharper than it had been in decades. That afternoon, Sarah brought me a small packet of Riverside stationery, pale blue paper with the facility's logo at the top, along with 3 matching envelopes and a ballpoint pen. Here you go, Mrs. Hayes. Take your time. If you need more, just let me know. I thanked her and carried the precious materials back to my room. This was it. This was my chance. But I couldn't rush. Whatever I wrote had to be perfect, detailed, undeniable. One shot to make anyone, believe that I wasn't a confused old woman, but a competent adult being held illegally. I sat at the small desk by the window and began to think through exactly what I needed to say. Over the next 3 days, I observed everything. I noted the staff schedules, the security procedures, the visitors' sign-in process. I watched how Emily had positioned herself as my sole contact, how she provided phone numbers and addresses that effectively isolated me from anyone who might question the situation. I also discovered something crucial. The activities director, a woman named Linda Chin, had worked at Riverside for 15 years. She was sharp, observant, and I'd noticed her watching me with a slightly puzzled expression during the few group activities I'd attended. Unlike some staff who accepted the confused patient label without question, Linda seemed to sense something didn't quite fit. On my 8th day at Riverside, during an afternoon craft session where we were supposedly making picture frames from popsicle sticks, Linda sat down next to me. "Mrs. Hayes, you're doing beautiful work," she said, watching me carefully align the wooden sticks with precision. "Very steady hands. Very focused." "Thank you," I said carefully. "I've always enjoyed working with my hands. I used to restore furniture for my inn." Linda's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your inn?" "Hayes Heritage Inn. It's a bed and breakfast about 30 miles from here. Victorian property, 12 rooms. I built the business over 40 years. I kept my voice even, factual. Not emotional, not pleading. Just stating information." "That sounds like quite an accomplishment," Linda said. "What made you decide to sell it?" "I didn't sell it." I met her eyes directly. "My daughter had me committed here against my will so she could take control of the property. She drugged me, forged medical documents claiming I was incompetent, and worked with a corrupt doctor named Morrison to have me declared legally unfit." I watched Linda's face carefully. There it was, a flicker of something. Not immediate belief, but not dismissal either. Curiosity. "Mrs. Hayes." "I know how that sounds," I interrupted gently. "I know what you're thinking. Every patient here probably claims they don't belong. But I can prove what I'm saying. My real doctor is Dr. James Patterson at Millbrook Family Medicine. I saw him 3 weeks before I was brought here. He can verify I showed no signs of cognitive decline. The quarterly reports for my inn show consistent, detailed business management up until the day I was committed. I have staff who worked with me daily who can attest to my mental clarity. And if you check the records, you'll find that the Dr. Morrison who supposedly evaluated me has a history of providing questionable competency assessments for families looking to gain guardianship." Linda was quiet for a long moment. "Those are very specific details, Mrs. Hayes. Because they're true. I'm not confused. I'm not delusional. I'm a prisoner who's been legally kidnapped by her own daughter." Linda stood slowly. "I need to think about this, Mrs. Hayes. But I appreciate you sharing your perspective." She walked away, and I returned to my popsicle stick frame, my heart pounding. I'd taken a risk. If Linda reported our conversation to the administration, to Emily, they might increase my medication, move me to a different facility, take away the small freedoms I still had. But I had to try. Because waiting passively for rescue wasn't an option. That night, after dinner, I finally began to write my letter. Not on the Riverside stationery that felt too easily dismissed, too much like something a confused resident would create. Instead, I used the notebook I'd purchased from the small store the facility operated for residents who had spending money. Plain, professional, impossible to dismiss as institutional. I wrote for 3 hours straight, my hand cramping, my eyes burning, but my mind absolutely clear. To whom it may concern, I began. My name is Margaret Elizabeth Hayes. I am 68 years old, and I am being held illegally at Riverside Nursing Home. I documented everything. The date and time Emily arrived at my home. The coffee that tasted wrong. The fog that descended over my thoughts. The conversation I'd overheard in the car about Dr. Morrison. Emily's admission during her visit that she'd orchestrated my commitment to seize control of my assets. The name and contact information for Dr. Patterson, for my accountant Mitchell Rosenberg, for Rosa Martinez who managed the day-to-day operations at the inn. I included account numbers, dates, specific financial figures that only someone with full cognitive function could recall. I described the inn's recent expansion plans, the renovation budget we'd approved, the new partnership with a local vineyard for weekend packages. Details. Concrete, verifiable, undeniable details. Then I wrote about what Emily had done, not with emotion, but with the clinical precision of someone building a legal case. My daughter, Emily Margaret Stokes, née Hayes, age 42, residing at 847 Oakmont Drive, apartment 12C, admitted to me during her visit on March 28 that she had drugged me with an unknown substance, paid Dr. Jonathan Morrison to provide a fraudulent competency evaluation, and arranged my commitment to Riverside Nursing Home with the specific purpose of gaining control of my business and assets. She explicitly stated that she had filed paperwork to assume management of Hayes Heritage Inn and had scheduled meetings with my financial representatives to transfer signatory authority. This was not done out of concern for my welfare. This was done, in her own words, because she believed the inn should be her inheritance and she was unwilling to wait for my natural death or voluntary retirement. She has effectively imprisoned a competent adult for financial gain. I am not confused. I am not suffering from dementia. I am a victim of elder abuse and illegal captivity. The medication I am being given here is administered without my informed consent and may be designed to create the very symptoms of confusion that justify my continued imprisonment. I continued writing, page after page, building an irrefutable case. I knew it had to be so detailed, so specific, so clearly articulated that no one could read it and think it came from someone with cognitive impairment. Finally, after 3 hours, I signed and dated it, Margaret Elizabeth Hayes, March 30, 2024. Written of my own free will, while held against my will. I read it over twice, checking for anything that could be dismissed or misconstrued. It was perfect. Comprehensive. Damning. Now I just needed someone to read it who would actually do something. The next morning, Linda Chin was leading a small book club in the common room. I'd never attended before, but I joined that day, carrying my letter carefully folded in the pocket of my cardigan. Linda noticed me immediately. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm so glad you decided to join us. We're discussing the remains of the day. Have you read it?" "Years ago," I said. "It's about duty, loyalty, and the cost of serving others faithfully even when they don't deserve it." Linda's eyes met mine, and I saw understanding there. She got the parallel. She got what I was really saying. After the book club ended and other residents shuffled off to lunch, I approached Linda as she gathered books. "Linda, may I speak with you privately?" She hesitated, then nodded. "My office." 5 minutes. Her office was small but neat, filing cabinets, a desk with family photos, certificates on the wall from various geriatric care conferences. She closed the door and sat across from me. "Mrs. Hayes." I pulled out the letter and placed it on her desk. "Before you say anything, I need you to read this. All of it. And then you need to help me decide what to do with it." Linda looked at the letter, then at me. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm not sure I should." "Please." My voice cracked slightly, the first real emotion I'd let show in days. "Just read it. If you still think I'm delusional after you finish, I'll never mention this again. But if there's any chance I'm telling the truth, if there's even a possibility that I'm a competent woman being held illegally, then you have a moral obligation to read what I've written." Linda picked up the letter slowly. "If what you're saying is true, this is incredibly serious. Elder abuse, fraud, possibly kidnapping." "I know. That's why I need someone who will actually investigate rather than just assume I'm confused." "Will you read it?" Linda unfolded the pages and began to read. I watched her face as she worked through my detailed account. I saw her eyebrows rise when she reached the financial specifics. I saw her mouth tighten when she read Emily's quoted admission. I saw her make a small note when I mentioned Dr. Morrison's name. It took her 15 minutes to read all 12 pages. When she finished, she looked up at me with an expression I hadn't seen from anyone at Riverside: respect. Mrs. Hayes, if even half of this is accurate. All of it is accurate. I can prove it. Call Dr. Patterson. Call Mitchell Rosenberg. Call Rosa at the inn. Any of them will confirm that I was managing complex business operations right up until the day I was brought here. Linda set the letter down carefully. I need to be honest with you. I'm an activities director, not a lawyer or a social worker. This is way beyond my authority or expertise. My heart sank. So you won't help? I didn't say that. Linda stood and walked to her filing cabinet, pulling out a folder. 3 years ago, we had a situation here. A man who was committed by his nephew for similar reasons, to gain control of his estate. It took 8 months to unravel, but eventually the truth came out. The nephew is now in prison for elder abuse and fraud. She pulled out a business card and handed it to me. This is the attorney who represented that resident. Her name is Catherine Walsh. She specializes in elder law and cases of improper guardianship. If anyone can help you, she can. I took the card with trembling fingers. Catherine Walsh, attorney at law. Elder advocacy and rights protection. But here's the reality, Linda continued. I can't make this call for you. If I go to administration with accusations against a family member without going through proper channels, I could lose my job. And if your daughter finds out you're trying to contact an attorney, she might move you to a different facility, somewhere more restrictive. We need to be strategic about this. What do you suggest? Linda thought for a moment. Your letter is excellent, detailed, specific, verifiable. But we need to get it to someone who can act on it immediately. Not just read it and file it away. Someone with legal authority. The police? Possibly. But elder abuse cases are complicated, especially when legal paperwork exists. The police might contact the nursing home administration first, which would alert your daughter. Linda tapped the card. I think our best bet is Catherine Walsh. She knows how to navigate these cases. She'll know exactly what steps to take. How do I contact her without anyone here knowing? Linda smiled slightly. You let me make the call. I'll tell her I have a potential client who needs urgent consultation. I'll explain the basics: commitment under questionable circumstances, possible fraud, competent client. I won't use your name yet. If she's willing to take the case, she'll come here for what looks like a routine legal consultation. Residents have the right to speak with attorneys. It's one of the few things the facility can't prevent or monitor. Hope flared in my chest for the first time in days. You'd do that for me? Mrs. Hayes, I've worked in elder care for 15 years. I've seen real dementia. I've seen genuine cognitive decline. And I've seen your intake evaluation and observed you for the past week. Your spatial reasoning is excellent. Your memory for recent events is perfect. Your ability to articulate complex thoughts is completely intact. Either you're the most high-functioning dementia patient I've ever encountered, or something is very wrong with your commitment here. She picked up the letter again. This letter confirms what I already suspected. You don't belong here. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for believing me. I'm not saying I believe everything yet, Linda said carefully. But I believe enough to think you deserve proper legal representation. Let me make the call. Give me 2 days to set something up. In the meantime, you need to continue appearing compliant. Attend activities. Be pleasant with staff. Don't give anyone reason to increase your restrictions or medications. I nodded. I understand. And Mrs. Hayes? Hide that letter somewhere safe. If anyone finds it before we can get it to Ms. Walsh, it could be used against you as evidence of paranoid delusions. She was right. I took the letter and carefully folded it back into my pocket. That evening, I slipped it inside the lining of my winter coat hanging in the small closet. No one would think to look there. 2 days. I just had to wait 2 more days. But those 2 days felt like 2 years. On the first day, Emily visited again. She breezed in with her perfect hair and expensive coat, carrying a small potted plant as a prop to show the staff what a devoted daughter she was. "Hi, Mom," she said brightly when we were alone in my room. "How are you feeling? The nurses tell me you've been doing well. Attending activities, taking your medications. I'm so proud of you for adjusting." I wanted to spit in her face. Instead, I smiled blandly. "The staff are very kind." "Good. That's good." Emily set the plant on my windowsill. "I wanted to update you on some things. The inn is transitioning smoothly under my management. Rosa had a few questions initially, but I think she's coming around to the new structure. Mitchell, your accountant, has been very helpful in explaining the finances. Everything's being handled properly." "That's nice, dear," I said in the vague, disconnected tone I'd learned to adopt around her. The tone of someone who didn't really understand or care about complex business matters. The tone she wanted to hear. Emily's shoulders relaxed slightly. "You know, Mom, I think this is actually good for you. You worked so hard for so long. You deserve rest. Here, you don't have to worry about payroll or occupancy rates or guest complaints. You can just be. Just be. As in, just exist. Just take up space. Just fade away quietly while she stole everything I'd built. Marcus and I are thinking about doing some renovations," Emily continued. "The inn could use updating. Maybe convert 2 of the smaller rooms into a larger suite. Add a spa component. Really capitalize on the historic charm." My hands clenched in my lap, but I kept my face neutral. She was already changing my inn. Already dismantling the careful balance I'd maintained between historic preservation and modern comfort. "Sounds lovely," I managed to say. Emily studied me for a moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Suspicion? Concern that I was too compliant? But then she shook it off. "Well, I should go. I have a meeting with a contractor tomorrow morning. I'll visit again next week." She stood, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Mom? The nursing home mentioned you've been attending that book club. That's wonderful. Keep engaging with activities. It's good for you." After she left, I sat very still, breathing slowly, fighting the urge to scream. She was redecorating my inn. Changing the vision I'd spent 4 decades perfecting. And she thought I was too out of it to even care. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Catherine Walsh, about whether Linda had reached her, about whether she'd be willing to take a case this complex. The next morning, Linda found me after breakfast. Her face was carefully neutral, but when she spoke, her voice was low and urgent. "Mrs. Hayes, you have a visitor scheduled for this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Catherine Walsh." I told the front desk she's a legal consultant discussing your estate planning. Totally routine. They didn't question it. She agreed to come? I gave her the basics. She's very interested. But Mrs. Hayes, this meeting is crucial. She'll evaluate you herself to determine if you're competent to instruct counsel. You need to be sharp, specific, factual. Show her the letter. Answer her questions directly. Don't get emotional or rambling. Can you do that? Yes, I said firmly. I can do that. At 1:55 p.m., I was seated in one of the small private consultation rooms the facility maintained for exactly these purposes: legal meetings, sensitive family discussions, end-of-life planning conversations. The room had a round table, 4 chairs, a box of tissues, and bland landscape paintings on the walls. At exactly 2 o'clock, the door opened and a woman walked in. Catherine Walsh was perhaps 55, with steel gray hair pulled back in a professional twist, sharp blue eyes behind frameless glasses, and the kind of no-nonsense energy that radiated competence. She wore a charcoal suit and carried a leather briefcase that looked like it had seen years of courtroom battles. She closed the door firmly and sat across from me. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm Catherine Walsh. Linda Chin called me 2 days ago with some concerning information about your situation here. Before we go any further, I need to conduct a preliminary assessment to determine if you're able to instruct counsel. Do you understand what that means?" "Yes," I said clearly. "You need to verify I'm mentally competent to hire an attorney and make decisions about my own legal representation." "Correct. I'm going to ask you some questions. Some may seem simple or even insulting, but I need to establish a baseline. Are you comfortable with that?" "Completely." For the next 20 minutes, Catherine asked me questions ranging from basic orientation, date, location, current president, to complex reasoning tasks. She asked me to explain the business model of the inn, to describe financial planning I'd done, to outline the sequence of events leading to my commitment. I answered everything precisely, factually, without emotion. This wasn't the time for tears or anger. This was the time to demonstrate exactly what Emily had tried to hide, that my mind was completely, perfectly, undeniably sound. Finally, Catherine set down her pen and looked at me directly. "Mrs. Hayes, you are without question one of the most cognitively intact people I've ever evaluated. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning is sound. Your ability to articulate complex information is exceptional. Which makes your presence in this facility extremely concerning. I told Linda I could prove I don't belong here. Linda mentioned you wrote a detailed account of what happened. May I see it?" I retrieved my letter from where I'd hidden it in my cardigan and handed it to her. Catherine read in absolute silence, making occasional notes in her legal pad. When she finished, she looked up with an expression that was equal parts fury and determination. "Mrs. Hayes, if what you've written here is accurate, and I have every reason to believe it is, your daughter has committed multiple serious crimes. Elder abuse. Fraud. Possibly kidnapping, depending on how the courts interpret illegal commitment. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of guardianship abuse I've seen. Can you help me?" Catherine's smile was sharp. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm going to do more than help you. I'm going to destroy the legal cage your daughter built around you, piece by piece. And when we're done, she's going to face every consequence she deserves." For the first time since I'd woken up in this place, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. And rage. And the fierce, burning determination to take back everything that was mine. Catherine Walsh didn't waste time. She pulled a stack of forms from her briefcase and slid them across the table. "First, I need you to sign a formal retainer agreement hiring me as your attorney. This establishes attorney-client privilege, which means everything we discuss is legally protected. No one at this facility can force me to disclose our conversations." I signed without hesitation. "Second," Catherine continued, "I need you to sign a power of attorney document designating me to act on your behalf in financial and legal matters. This will allow me to access records, speak with your bank and accountant, and begin building our case without needing to go through Emily." I signed that too. "Third, we need to move fast. Your daughter has clearly been working quickly to consolidate control. How long has it been since you were committed?" 12 days. Catherine's eyebrows rose. 12 days and she's already meeting with contractors? She's not wasting any time. She made more notes. "Here's what's going to happen. First, I'm going to file an emergency petition with the court to review your guardianship arrangement. I'll argue that you were evaluated by a potentially corrupt physician, that you were committed without proper due process, and that you're demonstrably competent to manage your own affairs. How long will that take? If we can get an emergency hearing, possibly a week. Maybe less if I can convince a judge this situation requires immediate intervention. While that's processing, I'm going to contact Dr. Patterson and request he conduct a comprehensive cognitive evaluation. We'll need independent medical evidence contradicting Dr. Morrison's assessment. Dr. Patterson will do it, I said confidently. He knows me. He'll confirm I was completely healthy at my last visit. Good. I'm also going to hire a private investigator to look into Dr. Morrison's history. If he's made a pattern of providing questionable competency evaluations, that will strengthen our case considerably. Catherine pulled out her phone and began making notes. I'll need contact information for Rosa Martinez, Mitchell Rosenberg, and anyone else who can testify to your mental competence immediately prior to commitment. Employees, business partners, suppliers, anyone who interacted with you regularly. I listed names and numbers from memory and watched Catherine's expression shift to something like satisfaction. This is exactly what I needed. A dozen professional witnesses who can testify you were managing complex operations days before you were supposedly too confused to live independently. She looked up. Now the difficult part. We need to keep all of this completely confidential until we're ready to act. If Emily discovers you've hired an attorney, she might try to move you to a different facility or argue that you're being manipulated by outside parties. Can you continue appearing compliant? Can you maintain the act? I thought about Emily's visit yesterday, about how I'd smiled and nodded while she talked about destroying my inn's integrity with tacky renovations. I can maintain it, I said firmly. Good. I'm also going to arrange for a forensic psychologist to evaluate you. Someone with credentials so impeccable that no one can question their assessment. It'll be expensive, probably $5,000 for a comprehensive evaluation, but it'll be worth it. Whatever it costs, I said. I have the resources. Or at least I did before Emily froze my accounts. Catherine's smile was grim. About that. I'm going to file a motion to freeze any asset transfers or sales until the guardianship review is complete. Emily won't be able to sell the inn or liquidate any major holdings. It won't get your access back immediately, but it'll stop her from looting everything while we fight this. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started. Catherine gathered her papers. I'm going to leave now before anyone gets suspicious about how long I've been here. Officially, we discussed advance directives and estate planning. That's our story if anyone asks. I'll be back in 3 days with the forensic psychologist. His name is Dr. Robert Chin. He's going to conduct a 4-hour evaluation. Be ready. I will. Catherine stood, then paused. Mrs. Hayes, I need to ask you something difficult. If we win this case, and I believe we will, what do you want to happen to your daughter? Criminal prosecution? Civil suit? Both? I'd been asking myself that question for 12 days. Emily was still my daughter. The little girl I'd raised, the teenager I'd put through college, the young woman whose wedding I'd planned and paid for. But she'd also drugged me, imprisoned me, and stolen my life's work for money. I want justice, I said quietly. Whatever that looks like legally. She needs to face consequences for what she's done. Not just to me, but to make sure she never does this to anyone else. Catherine nodded with respect. That's the right answer. I'll be in touch. After she left, I sat in that small room for a long time, processing everything. I had an attorney. I had a plan. I had hope. But I also had to survive the next several days without Emily realizing what was happening. That evening at dinner, I sat with 3 other residents, Dorothy, who had Alzheimer's and thought her long-dead husband was picking her up after the meal, Frank, who'd had a stroke and could barely speak but whose eyes were still sharp and aware, and Marion, whose family visited once a month and who spent most days reading mystery novels. Mrs. Hayes, you seem chipper today, Marion observed. Did you have a nice visit with your attorney? I'd forgotten Marian was sharp. Most people underestimated her because she was quiet, but she noticed everything. Just routine estate planning, I said casually. Making sure everything's in order. Marian's eyes narrowed slightly. Your daughter seems very involved in your care. She visits often. There was something in her tone. Not quite a question, but an observation. An opening. Yes, Emily has been very attentive since I arrived. My daughter used to visit a lot too, Marian said quietly. At first. Then the visits got shorter. Now she calls every few weeks, asks if I need anything, tells me she's busy. I know what that means. She's busy spending my money, living in my house, using my car. She's just waiting for me to die so she doesn't have to pretend to care anymore. Frank made a sound, something between agreement and disgust. Dorothy continued eating, oblivious to the conversation. I'm sorry, Marian, I said. Marian shrugged. I stopped fighting it. What's the point? I'm 82. No lawyer wants to take on a case for an old woman who might not live long enough to see it resolved. My daughter has power of attorney, the house is in her name now, and I signed everything over myself when I thought I was doing the right thing. I was stupid. Trusting. You weren't stupid, I said firmly. You loved your daughter and believed she loved you back. That's not stupidity. That's faith. And your daughter betrayed that faith. Marian looked at me with sudden intensity. You understand. I understand. But you're fighting back, aren't you? Marian's voice dropped to barely a whisper. That attorney today wasn't just about estate planning. You're building a case. I hesitated, then decided Marian deserved honesty. Yes. Good. Marian's jaw set with satisfaction. Good. Someone should fight. Someone should win. Even if it can't be me, at least I want to know it's possible. Frank made another sound, and when I looked at him, he very deliberately gave me a thumbs up with his one functioning hand. These were my people now. Not by choice, but by circumstance. All of us warehoused by families who saw us as inconvenient, as obstacles to inheritance, as burdens rather than human beings worthy of dignity and choice. I thought about Emily's words. That should be my inheritance. As if my life, my work, my accomplishments existed solely to be passed down to her. As if I had no right to continue living, working, succeeding on my own terms. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything I'd lost and everything I was fighting to reclaim. The next 3 days were an exercise in performance art. I attended activities. I smiled at staff. I took my medications, or appeared to, still palming the anxiety pills and disposing of them later. I called Emily once, a brief conversation where I asked vague questions about the weather and told her I'd enjoyed a craft project. You sound good, Mom, Emily said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. Relief that I was docile. Manageable. No longer a threat. On the 4th day, Catherine returned with Dr. Robert Chin. Dr. Chin was perhaps 45, with kind eyes and an unassuming demeanor that immediately put me at ease. He set up in the same consultation room, spreading out test materials, recording equipment, and evaluation forms. Mrs. Hayes, I'm going to conduct a comprehensive cognitive and psychological assessment. This will take approximately 4 hours with breaks. We'll do memory tests, reasoning tasks, psychological inventories, and a detailed interview about your life and recent experiences. Are you ready? Absolutely. The evaluation was exhausting but oddly satisfying. Every task Dr. Chin gave me, I completed flawlessly. Memory tests, I recalled lists of words, sequences of numbers, details from paragraphs he read. Reasoning tasks, I solved logic puzzles, identified patterns, explained complex cause and effect relationships. Psychological inventories. I answered hundreds of questions about my mood, my stress levels, my perception of reality. After 3 hours, Dr. Chen sat back and looked at me with something like amazement. Mrs. Hayes, I need to be frank with you. I've evaluated hundreds of elderly patients over my career. Many with genuine cognitive impairment, many suspected of being improperly committed. You are, without question, one of the most cognitively intact 68-year-olds I've ever assessed. Can you put that in writing? Not only can I put it in writing, I'm going to testify to it under oath. Your short-term memory is exceptional, better than most people half your age. Your reasoning ability is completely intact. Your emotional state, while understandably stressed given your situation, shows no signs of depression, psychosis, or any other mental health condition that would warrant commitment. Frankly, Mrs. Hayes, you don't belong here. You belong running that inn you built. I felt tears prick my eyes for the first time in days. Thank you. Dr. Chen packed up his materials. I'll have my full report to Ms. Walsh within 48 hours. It will make very clear that whoever evaluated you and determined you were incompetent was either grossly negligent or deliberately fraudulent. After he left, Catherine stayed behind. We've got them, she said quietly. Between Dr. Chen's evaluation, Dr. Patterson's records, your business documentation, and witness statements I've already started collecting, we have an absolutely bulletproof case. I'm filing the emergency petition tomorrow morning. With any luck, we'll have a hearing within a week. What happens at the hearing? The judge will review all the evidence, Dr. Morrison's evaluation versus Dr. Chen's, your business records, witness testimony. If the judge agrees your commitment was improper, they can immediately suspend Emily's guardianship and restore your rights. They might also order an investigation into Dr. Morrison and potentially refer Emily's actions for criminal prosecution. Will Emily be there? She'll be notified and given the opportunity to contest. But Mrs. Hayes, she won't have any real defense. The evidence against her is overwhelming. That night, I allowed myself to imagine it. Walking out of Riverside. Going home. Returning to the inn. Seeing Rosa and the staff. Reclaiming my life. But I also knew Emily wouldn't go down without a fight. I was right. 2 days later, on a Tuesday morning, Emily arrived unannounced. She bypassed the sign-in desk, clearly knowing she had unrestricted access as my legal guardian, and walked straight to my room. I was reading when she burst through the door, her face flushed with fury. "What the hell have you done?" she hissed, closing the door hard behind her. I set down my book slowly. "I don't know what you mean. Don't play stupid with me, Mother. I got a notice from the court. A petition to review my guardianship. Filed by some attorney named Catherine Walsh who I've never heard of. Who somehow has power of attorney to access your records and finances." I met her eyes steadily. "I hired a lawyer, Emily. I'm challenging my commitment because it was illegal." Emily's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Illegal? You were evaluated by a licensed physician. You were committed through proper legal channels. You're in a facility that meets all state standards. There's nothing illegal about it. Except I'm not incompetent. I never was. You drugged me, paid a corrupt doctor to lie, and had me imprisoned so you could steal my business. Oh my God, you're still spouting this paranoid nonsense?" Emily threw her hands up. "This is exactly why you're here. You're delusional. You think everyone's out to get you. You think your own daughter is some kind of criminal mastermind. It's sad, Mom. It's really sad. Is it sad that I remember you admitting it to my face? Is it sad that I documented every conversation, every detail, every piece of evidence? Is it sad that I hired an attorney who specializes in exactly this kind of elder abuse?" Emily's face went pale. "You're making things up. Confabulating. It's a symptom of your condition. What condition would that be, Emily? Because Dr. Robert Chin just spent 4 hours evaluating me and found absolutely no cognitive impairment. Dr. Patterson's records from 3 weeks before you had me committed show the same thing. My business records show detailed, complex management right up until the day you drugged me. So please, tell me what condition I have that requires me to be locked up here? Emily sat down hard in the room's single chair. For a moment, she looked genuinely shaken. Then her expression hardened. You're not getting out of here. I have legal guardianship. The facility supports that guardianship. Your lawyer can file all the petitions she wants, but it'll take months to get through the courts. By then, everything will be too established to undo. The inn will be under my management, the finances restructured, and you'll just be a confused old woman trying to disrupt a legal guardianship arrangement. Is that what you think? I kept my voice level, cold. That I'll just give up? That I'll quietly fade away while you destroy everything I built? I'm not destroying anything. I'm preserving our family legacy. By converting historic rooms into a spa? By adding tacky modern updates to a Victorian property? By firing Rosa and replacing her with some manager who doesn't understand the inn's identity? Emily's eyes widened. How did you? She caught herself, but too late. How did I know you were planning to fire Rosa? Because I'm not the confused invalid you want everyone to think I am. I'm completely aware. I know everything you're doing, Emily. And I'm going to stop it. Emily stood abruptly. Enjoy your delusions, Mother. I'll see you at the hearing. Assuming your lawyer even manages to get one scheduled. She left, slamming the door behind her. I sat very still, my heart pounding. That had been risky, showing my hand. But I'd needed Emily to know this wasn't over. That I wasn't defeated. That I was coming for her. 3 days later, Catherine called my room. The staff had been instructed to allow phone calls from my attorney, one of the few rights even guardianship couldn't completely eliminate. Mrs. Hayes, we have our hearing. Friday, 9 a.m., in front of Judge Patricia Harriman. She's excellent, fair, thorough, and she has a reputation for not tolerating guardianship abuse. That's 3 days from now. I know it's fast. Emily's attorney filed a motion to delay, claiming you need more time to prepare, but Judge Harriman denied it. She reviewed the preliminary evidence I submitted and decided this warranted urgent review. What do I need to do? Be ready to testify. To tell your story clearly and calmly. Emily's attorney will try to paint you as confused, manipulated by me, unable to understand what's happening. You need to demonstrate the exact opposite. I can do that. I know you can. Mrs. Hayes, we're going to win this. I've seen the evidence. It's overwhelming. Your daughter made one critical mistake. What's that? Catherine's voice held grim satisfaction. She underestimated you. She thought you were weak, passive, easy to control. She never imagined you'd fight back. That arrogance is going to cost her everything. After the call ended, I walked to the window and looked out at the grounds of Riverside. Manicured lawns, neat flower beds, residents walking slowly with aides, families visiting on benches. It looked peaceful. Safe. Like a place where elderly people were cared for and protected. But for me, it was a prison. Beautiful, well-maintained, staffed with kind people who genuinely believed they were helping me. A prison nonetheless. I thought about Marion, who'd given up fighting. About Frank, who couldn't speak but whose eyes held so much trapped frustration. About Dorothy, who was genuinely impaired and genuinely needed to be here. And I thought about the thousands of other elderly people locked in facilities just like this one, not because they needed care, but because someone else wanted their money. In 3 days, I'd have a chance to break free. But more than that, I'd have a chance to expose what Emily had done. To make sure she faced consequences. to prevent her from ever doing this to anyone else. 3 days. I could survive 3 more days. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. I lay in my narrow bed, mentally rehearsing everything I needed to say, every detail I needed to remember, every question Catherine had prepared me for. "They'll try to confuse you about dates," she'd said during our final preparation session that afternoon. "They'll ask you to recall specific conversations, specific numbers. They'll try to trip you up, make you seem uncertain or forgetful. Don't let them. If you don't remember something exactly, say so." Saying, "I don't recall the precise date, but it was approximately," sounds far more credible than making something up. I'd practiced with her for 2 hours, answering hostile questions, maintaining my composure, staying factual rather than emotional. Now, in the darkness of my room, I went through it all again. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and got up. I showered carefully, then dressed in the outfit Catherine had brought me, a navy blue suit, simple but professional, that she'd retrieved from my home with Rose's help. My own clothes, not the soft, shapeless, comfortable wear the facility had provided. I looked at myself in the small mirror above the sink. Gray hair neatly styled, minimal makeup, the suit fitting well despite 12 days of facility food. I looked competent. Professional. Like someone who ran a successful business, not someone who needed to be institutionalized. "Good morning, Mrs. Hayes," Sarah said when she came in with my morning medications. She stopped short when she saw me. "Oh my. You look wonderful. Do you have somewhere special to be today?" "Court hearing," I said simply. Sarah's expression shifted to something like concern. "Court? Is everything all right?" "It will be." At 7:30, Catherine arrived with a driver. She'd arranged for me to be transported to the courthouse rather than having to rely on Riverside's van service. "You look perfect," Catherine said approvingly as I settled into the back seat of her car. Composed, professional, credible. Exactly what we need. "I'm nervous," I admitted. "Good. That means you understand what's at stake. But Mrs. Hayes, I need you to channel that nervousness into focus. Today, you're not an elderly woman fighting against unfair commitment. Today, you're a businesswoman presenting evidence in a legal proceeding. Can you be that person?" I thought about all the times I'd negotiated with suppliers, handled difficult guests, managed staff conflicts, dealt with health inspectors and tax auditors, and every other challenge that came with running a business for 40 years. "Yes," I said firmly. "I can be that person." The courthouse was a stern gray building in the center of town. Catherine led me through security, up 2 flights of stairs, to a courtroom that smelled of old wood and furniture polish. Emily was already there with her attorney, a thin man in his 40s with slicked-back hair and an expensive suit. Emily wore a dove-gray dress and pearl earrings, the picture of a dutiful daughter. When she saw me, her expression flickered with something, surprise at how I looked, maybe, or concern that I appeared so clearly competent. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Patricia Harriman presiding. Judge Harriman was a black woman in her mid-60s with silver-streaked hair, sharp eyes behind reading glasses, and the kind of presence that commanded immediate respect. She settled into her chair and reviewed the file before her. "Good morning. We're here for an emergency review of guardianship in the matter of Margaret Elizabeth Hayes. Ms. Walsh, you filed the petition. Proceed." Catherine stood, her voice clear and confident. "Your Honor, my client Mrs. Margaret Hayes was committed to Riverside Nursing Home 12 days ago based on an evaluation claiming she was incompetent to care for herself. I'm here to demonstrate that this evaluation was fraudulent, that Mrs. Hayes is completely competent, and that her commitment was orchestrated by her daughter Emily Stokes for the purpose of gaining control of Mrs. Hayes' substantial assets." Emily's attorney, Mr. Preston, stood immediately. "Your Honor, this is a serious accusation against my client, who has acted only out of love and concern for her mother's welfare. Mrs. Hayes has been showing signs of cognitive decline for months. The evaluation by Dr. Morrison was conducted properly and in good faith. Judge Harriman held up a hand. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence submitted by both parties. Ms. Walsh, I'm inclined to hear your evidence first. Call your first witness. I call Mrs. Margaret Hayes to the stand. I walked to the witness box, was sworn in, and sat down. My hands wanted to shake, but I forced them still, folding them calmly in my lap. Catherine approached with a warm but professional smile. Mrs. Hayes, please state your full name and age for the record. Margaret Elizabeth Hayes. I'm 68 years old. And what is your occupation? I'm the owner and manager of Hayes Heritage Inn, a 12-room bed and breakfast in Millbrook, New York. I've owned and operated the property for 40 years. 40 years. That's quite an accomplishment. Can you describe your typical responsibilities in managing the inn? I took a breath and began to describe my work: the financial management, staff supervision, guest services, marketing, property maintenance, regulatory compliance, vendor relationships. I watched the judge taking notes, her expression thoughtful. Now, Mrs. Hayes, Catherine continued, you were committed to Riverside Nursing Home on March 23rd of this year. Can you tell us what happened that day? I told the story exactly as I documented it. The visit from Emily and Marcus. The coffee that tasted wrong. The fog that descended over my thoughts. The trip to Riverside in a state of drugged confusion. Waking up in a facility where I was told I had cognitive impairment. Did you consent to being committed to Riverside? Absolutely not. I was incapacitated and unable to provide meaningful consent. And why do you believe you were incapacitated? Because my daughter drugged me. I don't know what substance she used, but the coffee she brought tasted bitter, and within 20 minutes I experienced symptoms I'd never had before: mental fog, difficulty speaking, visual disturbance. Those symptoms disappeared completely after the substance left my system. Mr. Preston objected. Speculation, Your Honor. Mrs. Hayes has no medical evidence she was drugged. Sustained, Judge Harriman said. Mrs. Hayes, please stick to what you know factually. Catherine nodded. Mrs. Hayes, setting aside the cause of your symptoms that day, can you describe your mental state in the weeks leading up to March 23rd? Completely clear. I was managing the inn's spring booking season, which is our busiest time. I was overseeing a minor renovation project in 2 of the rooms. I was reviewing quarterly financial reports and planning our summer marketing campaign. I was functioning at a high level professionally and personally. Do you have any history of confusion, memory loss, or cognitive impairment? None whatsoever. Catherine walked back to her table and picked up a thick folder. Your Honor, I'd like to submit into evidence a comprehensive cognitive evaluation conducted by Dr. Robert Chin, a board-certified forensic psychologist, just 6 days ago. Dr. Chin spent 4 hours evaluating Mrs. Hayes and found absolutely no signs of cognitive impairment. In fact, he rated her cognitive function as exceptional for her age. She handed copies to the judge and to Mr. Preston. I'd also like to submit medical records from Dr. James Patterson, Mrs. Hayes's physician of 12 years. His last examination of Mrs. Hayes was on March 5th, just 18 days before her commitment. He found her to be in excellent health with no signs of cognitive decline. More documents exchanged hands. Finally, I'd like to submit business records from Hayes Heritage Inn showing complex financial management, detailed operational planning, and sophisticated business correspondence authored by Mrs. Hayes in the weeks immediately prior to her commitment. These are not the records of someone with dementia or significant cognitive impairment. Judge Harriman reviewed the documents in silence for several minutes. Then she looked up at Mr. Preston. Counsel, I'm quite concerned by what I'm seeing here. Do you have evidence to rebut these findings? Mr. Preston stood. Your Honor, we have Dr. Morrison's evaluation, which was conducted in good faith based on information provided by Mrs. Hayes's daughter about concerning behaviors and episodes of confusion. I'd like to see that evaluation. Mr. Preston handed over a thin file, maybe 3 pages total. Judge Harriman read it, her expression growing increasingly skeptical. This evaluation appears to have been conducted in approximately 20 minutes and consists primarily of Ms. Stokes's reported observations rather than direct assessment of Mrs. Hayes. Dr. Morrison is a respected physician. Is he here to testify today? No, Your Honor. He's unavailable. Catherine stood. Your Honor, if I may, I have information about Dr. Morrison's history that's relevant to this proceeding. Proceed. Dr. Jonathan Morrison has been involved in 4 separate guardianship cases in the past 3 years where his competency evaluations were later challenged. In 2 of those cases, the guardianship was overturned and Morrison was found to have conducted inadequate assessments. In one case, he was sanctioned by the state medical board for providing an evaluation without properly examining the patient. Emily's face had gone pale. Mr. Preston was flipping frantically through his own files. Judge Harriman set down Morrison's evaluation with visible distaste. Ms. Walsh, do you have witnesses who can speak to Mrs. Hayes's mental state prior to commitment? I do, Your Honor. I'd like to call Rosa Martinez. Rosa, my day-to-day manager at the inn, walked to the stand. She was nervous, clearly uncomfortable in a courtroom, but her testimony was powerful. I spoke with Mrs. Hayes every single day, Rosa said. Sometimes multiple times a day. We discussed room assignments, guest requests, supply orders, staffing schedules, maintenance issues. She was sharp, organized, detail-oriented. She caught mistakes I made. She remembered conversations from weeks earlier. There was absolutely nothing wrong with her mind. When was your last conversation with Mrs. Hayes before she was committed? March 22nd, the day before. We discussed plans for a group booking we had coming in April. Mrs. Hayes gave me detailed instructions about room configurations and special requests. Everything made perfect sense. Catherine also called Mitchell Rosenberg, my accountant, who testified about complex financial discussions we'd had. She called 2 long-term suppliers who described business negotiations I'd conducted. She even called a guest who'd stayed at the inn the week before my commitment and had a lengthy conversation with me about local hiking trails. Every witness painted the same picture, a competent, sharp, professionally functioning woman with no signs of cognitive impairment. By the time Catherine rested her case, Judge Harriman's skepticism about the guardianship was clear. Mr. Preston, your turn. I assume you'll want to call Ms. Stokes to testify? Emily took the stand, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Mr. Preston led her through a series of questions about her concerns for my welfare, her claims that I'd been forgetting things and acting confused. Can you give specific examples? Judge Harriman asked. Emily faltered. Well, she asked me the same question twice about my job. What question? About whether I'd gotten a promotion. And you're certain you'd already answered that question? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Harriman made a note. What other examples? Emily listed a few more incidents, all minor, all vague, nothing that actually suggested cognitive impairment. I was worried, she concluded. I didn't want her to hurt herself. The inn has stairs. She lives alone. I just wanted her to be safe. Yet you didn't consult with her actual physician, Dr. Patterson, before having her committed? Dr. Morrison said he would handle the medical evaluation. And you paid Dr. Morrison directly for that evaluation? Emily's face flushed. I don't see why that's relevant. Answer the question, please. Yes. I paid him $2,500 for his time. The courtroom went very quiet. You paid $2,500 for a 20-minute evaluation that resulted in your mother being committed and you gaining control of her $3.2 million estate? I didn't, it wasn't like that. Catherine stood. Your Honor, may I cross-examine? Please do. Catherine approached Emily with the kind of controlled intensity that made it clear this was the moment she'd been waiting for. Ms. Stokes, you testified that you were concerned about your mother living alone. Yet you didn't offer to have her move in with you, did you? We don't have room. You have a 3-bedroom apartment, according to the lease I reviewed. Just you and your husband. You had room. You simply didn't offer. Instead, you had her committed to an institution. Why? I thought professional care would be better. Professional care at $8,500 per month, paid from your mother's assets. Assets you now control as guardian. Mr. Preston objected. Argumentative. Sustained. Move on, Ms. Walsh. Ms. Stokes, within days of your mother's commitment, you began taking steps to assume control of Hayes Heritage, correct? I needed to make sure the business continued operating. You met with contractors about renovations. You discussed firing the longtime manager. You've been making significant changes to a business your mother built over 40 years. All within less than 2 weeks of having her committed. That's remarkably fast action for someone who claims they were just concerned about their mother's safety. Emily's jaw tightened. The business needed attention. Did it? Because the financial records show the inn was highly profitable, with occupancy rates above 90% and excellent reviews. It doesn't appear to have needed saving. What it appears to have needed was for your mother to be removed so you could take control. Objection. Mr. Preston was on his feet. But the damage was done. Judge Harriman was looking at Emily with open distrust. Catherine pressed harder. Miss Stokes, let me ask you directly, did you drug your mother on March 23rd to make her appear confused? No. That's insane. Did you pay Dr. Morrison to provide a fraudulent evaluation? I paid him for his professional services. Did you commit your mother to Riverside Nursing Home primarily to gain control of her financial assets? I did it because she needed care. Then why, Catherine said quietly, didn't you visit her for the first 4 days she was there? Why didn't you call to check on her? Why was your first visit primarily focused on telling her to stop fighting the commitment? Emily's composure finally cracked. Because she needed to accept reality. She needed to understand that she can't keep running that in forever. She's 68 years old. It was time for her to let go. The courtroom went silent. Let go, Catherine repeated. Not because she was incompetent. But because you decided it was time. You decided she'd worked long enough. You decided you were ready for your inheritance. So you manufactured a crisis to take it. I didn't. Emily looked desperately at her attorney, but Mr. Preston looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Judge Harriman leaned forward. Ms. Stokes, I've heard enough. Ms. Walsh, do you have any further witnesses? Just one more, Your Honor. I'd like to recall Mrs. Hayes to the stand. I returned to the witness box, my heart pounding. Mrs. Hayes, Catherine said gently, you've heard your daughter's testimony. You've heard her admit that her concern wasn't about your safety but about the inn and her inheritance. How does that make you feel? I looked at Emily, then back at Catherine. Heartbroken, I said quietly. I loved her more than anything in the world. I worked 3 jobs to put her through college. I supported her dreams, her marriage, every choice she made. And she repaid that love by drugging me, imprisoning me, and trying to steal everything I built. So yes, I'm heartbroken. But I'm also determined that she won't get away with it. What would you like to see happen, Mrs. Hayes? I want my freedom. I want my life back. I want control of my business and my assets restored. And I want my daughter to face legal consequences for what she's done, not out of revenge, but because what she did is a crime. Elder abuse is a crime. Fraud is a crime. And if she did this to me, what's to stop her from doing it to someone else someday? Judge Harriman was nodding slowly. Catherine returned to her seat. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Harriman looked at Mr. Preston. Do you have anything else? He stood wearily. No, Your Honor. We rest. The judge took off her reading glasses and looked directly at Emily. Miss Stokes, I've presided over hundreds of guardianship cases. I've seen families make genuinely difficult decisions about elderly relatives who truly needed care. But I've also seen people abuse the guardianship system to exploit vulnerable elderly people for financial gain. What I've heard today suggests very strongly that your case falls into the latter category. She turned to me. Mrs. Hayes, based on the evidence presented, I find that you are fully competent to manage your own affairs. You are committed to Riverside Nursing Home without proper cause, based on a grossly inadequate evaluation by a physician with a questionable history. I am hereby immediately suspending Ms. Stokes's guardianship and restoring your full legal rights. Relief crashed over me so powerfully I had to grip the witness box to stay upright. Furthermore, Judge Harriman continued, I am ordering that all asset transfers, business decisions, and financial transactions conducted by Ms. Stokes during the guardianship period be reviewed and potentially reversed. Ms. Walsh, please coordinate with Mrs. Hayes' accountant to restore her full financial control. Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Stokes, I am also referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into possible criminal charges including elder abuse, fraud, and procurement of false documents. You should expect to be contacted by law enforcement. Emily was crying now, ugly tears running down her carefully made-up face. Your Honor, please. I'm not finished. I am also ordering you to pay all of Mrs. Hayes' legal fees incurred in fighting this improper guardianship. Finally, I am issuing a restraining order. You are to have no contact with your mother for a period of 6 months, after which time you may petition this court to modify that order. Do you understand? Yes, Emily whispered. Mrs. Hayes, you're free to go home today. Riverside will be notified immediately to prepare your discharge. Is there anything else you need from this court? I stood on shaking legs. No, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for fighting. Too many elderly people in your situation simply give up. You refuse to be erased. That took courage. The gavel came down with a sharp crack, and just like that, I was free. Catherine hugged me tightly in the hallway outside the courtroom. We did it. We actually did it. You did it, I corrected. You took a case that seemed impossible and you won. No, Mrs. Hayes. You won. The moment you asked for that paper and pen, the moment you wrote down the truth, you won. I just helped make it official. 2 hours later, I walked out of Riverside Nursing Home. Sarah was there to see me off, tears in her eyes. I'm so glad the truth came out, she said. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. You were kind to me, I said. In a place where I felt completely powerless, you treated me with dignity. Thank you for that. Marion was there too, in her wheelchair, Frank beside her. You did it, Marion said, gripping my hand hard. You actually did it. I did. And Marion, if you want to fight your own case, Catherine Walsh will talk to you. It's never too late. Marion's eyes filled with tears. I'm 82. And you're still here. Still breathing. Still worth fighting for. I left them my contact information, hugged them both, and walked out into the sunshine. Rosa was waiting with her car to drive me home. When I saw her, I broke down completely, sobbing in her arms in the parking lot. It's over, she kept saying. It's over. You're coming home. Home. My Victorian house next to the inn. The property I'd saved, renovated, loved for 40 years. When we pulled into the driveway, my entire staff was waiting. All 4 of them, holding a banner that read, "Welcome home, Margaret." I cried again, overwhelmed by the realization that while Emily had seen me as something to discard, these people, my chosen family, had been waiting for my return. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in 12 days. The mattress was familiar, the pillows perfect, the sounds of the inn settling around me like a lullaby. But I wasn't naive. Emily might be facing criminal charges, but the case would take months or even years to resolve. Our relationship, already fractured, was now completely destroyed. And the trauma of what she'd done would take time to heal. But I was home. I was free. And I had won. The first week home felt surreal. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, disoriented, expecting to see the pale yellow walls of my room at Riverside. Instead, I'd see my own ceiling, my own furniture, hear the familiar creak of the old house settling. Free. I was actually free. Rosa had maintained the inn beautifully during my absence. The spring booking season was in full swing, and within 2 days of returning, I was back to my normal routine, morning rounds to check each room, reviewing the previous day's check-ins, planning meals, addressing maintenance issues. It felt like putting on a favorite coat that fit perfectly. This was who I was. Not a helpless invalid, but a competent businesswoman. But the legal battles were far from over. Catherine called 3 days after my release. Mrs. Hayes, we need to discuss next steps. The district attorney's office has opened a formal investigation into Emily's actions. They want to interview you, get a detailed statement, and review all the evidence we compiled. When? Tomorrow if you're ready. They're treating this as a high-priority case because guardianship abuse is becoming increasingly common and they want to send a message that it won't be tolerated. I met with Assistant District Attorney James Park the next day. He was perhaps 35, sharp-eyed, and thoroughly prepared. He spent 3 hours taking my statement, recording every detail of what Emily had done. Mrs. Hayes, I want to be frank with you about what we're facing, he said when we finished. Your daughter will likely argue this was a misunderstanding, that she genuinely believed you needed care, that Dr. Morrison's evaluation, while inadequate, was obtained in good faith. Her attorney will paint her as a concerned daughter who made a difficult decision, not a criminal who committed elder abuse. But she admitted it to me. She told me directly that she did this to take control of the inn. I know. But that admission was private, with no witnesses. Unless you recorded it. I didn't. I had no way to record anything at Riverside. Ada Park nodded. That's what I expected. So our case will rest primarily on circumstantial evidence, the timeline showing how quickly she moved to take control, the payment to Dr. Morrison, her failure to consult your actual physician, the inadequacy of the evaluation itself. It's a strong case, but not a slam dunk. What charges are you pursuing? Elder abuse in the second degree, fraud, and conspiracy to defraud. If convicted on all counts, she could face up to 7 years in prison plus substantial fines. But Mrs. Hayes, I need you to understand, she might not get prison time. Especially if this is her first offense, she might get probation, community service, mandatory counseling. The thought of Emily walking free, facing no real consequences, made my stomach turn. After everything she did? I'll fight for the maximum sentence. But I want you to be prepared for the possibility that the judge might be lenient. Unfortunately, family-based elder abuse often isn't treated as seriously as it should be. Over the next few weeks, the investigation unfolded. Ada Park subpoenaed Dr. Morrison's records and discovered he conducted 9 similar evaluations in the past 3 years, all resulting in guardianship arrangements, all paid for directly by the family member seeking guardianship, all lasting less than 30 minutes. The State Medical Board opened their own investigation. 2 previous patients who'd been committed based on Morrison's evaluations came forward with similar stories. Meanwhile, I had to deal with the damage Emily had done to my business. Mitchell Rosenberg, my accountant, helped me trace every transaction she'd made during her 12-day reign as guardian. She'd transferred $47,000 from my business account to a joint account with Marcus. She'd spent $12,000 on consultation fees with contractors she'd planned to hire for renovations. She'd even tried to take out a $200,000 loan using the inn as collateral. Thankfully, the bank had processed slowly enough that the guardianship was overturned before the loan was finalized. She did a lot of damage in a very short time, Mitchell said grimly. If this had gone on for months, she could have bled the business dry. I filed a civil suit to recover the stolen funds. Emily's attorney argued she'd used the money in good faith for business improvements, but Judge Harriman wasn't having it. Ms. Stokes had no authority to make these transfers, the judge ruled. She is ordered to return $47,000 plus interest within 90 days or face additional penalties. Emily didn't have the money. Marcus had apparently spent most of it on a new car and expensive electronics. They were forced to liquidate assets, sell the car, empty their savings. Good. I wanted them to feel the financial pain they'd tried to inflict on me. But money wasn't the only issue. Emily had also damaged relationships I'd built over decades. She called several of my long-term business partners and told them I was tragically ill and she'd be taking over communications. She'd spoken to 3 major wedding planners who regularly referred clients to the inn and suggested they might want to find more reliable partners given the ownership transition. I had to personally call each person, explain what had really happened, and rebuild trust. Most were sympathetic and angry on my behalf. A few were uncomfortable with the family drama and quietly stopped doing business with me. Rosa pulled me aside one day as I was reviewing booking calendars. Margaret, there's something I need to tell you about Emily's time here. What happened? She came to the inn twice. Both times, she walked through like she owned the place. The second time, she brought someone she introduced as a potential new manager. She gave him a tour, discussed changes she wanted to make, talked about updating our tired brand identity. My hands clenched. Who is this person? I don't know. He had a business card, Daniel Fredericks, hospitality consultant. I kept it. She handed me the card. I immediately called Daniel Fredericks. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Fredericks, this is Margaret Hayes, owner of Hayes Heritage Inn. I understand you toured my property recently? Oh, yes, Mrs. Hayes. Emily Stokes contacted me about potentially coming on as general manager. But I haven't heard back from her in a couple weeks. Is the position still open? There never was a position. Ms. Stokes had no authority to hire anyone. She was temporarily in control due to a guardianship arrangement that has since been overturned. I remain the sole owner and manager of the inn. Silence on the line. I had no idea. She presented herself as the new owner. Said you'd retired due to health issues. I was illegally committed to a nursing home by my daughter so she could steal my business. That guardianship has been dissolved and she's currently under criminal investigation. If she contacts you again, please let me know immediately. Jesus. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Hayes. I had no idea. After I hung up, I sat at my desk, shaking with rage. Emily hadn't just imprisoned me. She'd been systematically dismantling my life, telling everyone I was sick or incompetent, preparing to replace me entirely. If I hadn't fought back, if I hadn't gotten that paper and pen, if I hadn't written down the truth, she would have succeeded. Within months, I'd have been just another elderly woman locked away while her family looted her estate. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom? Emily's voice. Shaking, desperate. You're violating the restraining order, I said coldly. I could have you arrested for this call. Please, just listen. Please. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant. Never meant what? To drug me? To imprison me? To steal my life's work? Which part didn't you mean, Emily? I was desperate. Marcus lost his job 6 months ago. We have so much debt. I thought if I could just get control of the inn for a while, we could stabilize financially, and then I'd give it back. You'd give it back? After firing my staff and changing everything I built? After telling people I was incompetent? After leaving me to rot in a nursing home? She was crying now. I didn't think it through. I didn't realize how wrong it was until it was too late. And then I was in too deep. I couldn't stop. Mom, please, I'm your daughter. You can't do this to me. You can't send me to prison. I'm not sending you to prison, Emily. You sent yourself the moment you decided to commit elder abuse and fraud. You made these choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. But I'm your only child. You always said family was everything. You stopped being my family the moment you treated me like an obstacle instead of a person. Family doesn't drug each other. Family doesn't lie to each other. Family doesn't imprison each other for money. Dad would have wanted you to forgive me. The mention of my late husband hit like a physical blow. Don't you dare bring your father into this. He would be horrified by what you've done. He spent his whole life teaching you about integrity and honor, and you threw it all away for money you hadn't even earned. I needed help. I asked you for a loan months ago and you said no. You asked me for $30,000 to invest in Marcus's business idea. I said no because Marcus has had 6 failed business ideas in as many years, and I wasn't going to throw money away. So instead of accepting that decision like an adult, you decided to take everything. You have so much. The inn is worth millions. You could have helped us. The inn is worth millions because I spent 40 years building it. Every room I renovated myself. Every supplier relationship I cultivated. Every guest review I earned through attention to detail and genuine care. You're not entitled to the fruits of my labor just because you're my daughter. You want money? Earn it. Build something. Work for it like I did. Emily's voice turned venomous. Easy for you to say. You had Dad's life insurance to get started. I have nothing. I had $50,000 in life insurance that barely covered his medical bills and funeral. I bought the inn with a mortgage I spent 15 years paying off while working 2 additional jobs. I built this business from nothing, Emily. And you tried to steal it because you were too lazy and entitled to build something yourself. I hate you, she hissed. I've always hated you. Perfect Margaret and her perfect inn and her perfect reputation. Do you know what it was like growing up as your daughter? Always being compared to you? Always hearing about what an amazing woman you were? I could never measure up. So yeah, I wanted to take it from you. I wanted to watch you lose everything you were so proud of. The mask was fully off now. This wasn't about money or debt. This was about jealousy and resentment that had been festering for decades. Then you should have said that years ago, I said quietly. You should have told me you felt that way instead of pretending everything was fine while plotting to destroy me. Maybe we could have worked through it. Maybe we could have salvaged our relationship. But you chose deception and cruelty instead. And now we're done. Mom. This call is over. Don't contact me again. Speak to your attorney if you have something to say legally. Otherwise, we have nothing to discuss. I hung up and immediately called Catherine to report the restraining order violation. She filed a complaint, and Emily was hit with an additional $1,000 fine and a stern warning from the judge that any further contact would result in immediate jail time. 3 months after my release from Riverside, Emily's criminal trial began. The courtroom was packed. Apparently, the case had attracted media attention. Local businesswoman fights back against daughter's scheme read one headline. Elder abuse case shines light on guardianship system failures read another. I sat behind the prosecution table, Catherine beside me for moral support even though she wasn't directly involved in the criminal case. Emily sat at the defense table looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect hair. She wore a simple gray suit, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back severely. Her attorney had clearly coached her to appear humble and remorseful. Ada Park presented the case methodically, calling witness after witness. Dr. Chen testified about my cognitive evaluation. Dr. Patterson testified about my perfect health. Rosa and Mitchell testified about my professional competence. Linda Chen from Riverside testified about how articulate and clear-thinking I'd been, how my letter had raised immediate red flags. Then they called me to the stand. I told my story again, this time to a jury of 12 strangers. I watched their faces as I described being drugged, waking up in Riverside, being told I was incompetent when I knew I wasn't. When I described Emily's visit where she admitted what she'd done, several jurors looked disgusted. Emily's attorney, a woman named Patricia Moss, tried to paint Emily as a loving daughter overwhelmed by concern. "Isn't it true that you sometimes forgot conversations?" she asked on cross-examination. "No. Your daughter testified that you asked her the same question about her job twice. Do you deny that happened?" I asked her for clarification because she gave me contradictory answers. That's not forgetting. That's seeking accurate information. Ms. Moss tried several more times to suggest I'd shown signs of confusion, but every time, I calmly explained the actual context. I'd been trained by Catherine to stay cool, factual, never defensive. Finally, frustrated, Ms. Moss went for emotional manipulation. "Mrs. Hayes, don't you love your daughter?" I paused, feeling the weight of the question. I loved the person I thought she was. The little girl I raised, the young woman I supported through college, the daughter I believed loved me back. But that person doesn't exist. The woman sitting at that table isn't someone I recognize. She's someone who saw me as an obstacle to her inheritance rather than a mother deserving of love and respect. So no, I don't love who she became. The courtroom was dead silent. When both sides rested their cases, the jury deliberated for 6 hours. They came back with a verdict, guilty on all counts. Emily sobbed as the verdict was read. Marcus, sitting in the gallery, put his face in his hands. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Catherine took my hand as we left the courtroom. "How do you feel?" "Vindicated," I said. "But not happy." I won, but what did I really win? My daughter is going to prison. My relationship with her is destroyed forever. Yes, I got justice, but it came at a terrible cost. The cost was Emily's to pay, not yours, Catherine said firmly. You didn't choose this. She did. At the sentencing hearing, Ada Park argued for the maximum, 7 years. Ms. Moss argued for leniency, probation, restitution, mandatory counseling. Judge Harriman listened to both sides, then addressed Emily directly. "Ms. Stokes, you committed one of the most insidious crimes in our legal system, the abuse of an elderly person who trusted you. You didn't do this out of desperate need. You have education, health, opportunities. You did this out of greed and entitlement. You believed you had a right to your mother's money simply by virtue of being her child. And when she didn't hand it over on your timeline, you stole it through deception and imprisonment. What makes this particularly egregious is that you showed no remorse during the commission of these crimes. You visited your mother in the nursing home not to comfort her, but to gloat. You began dismantling her life before she'd even been committed for 2 weeks. You showed not love, but cruelty. However, I'm also aware that you have no prior criminal record, that you are currently pregnant." My head snapped up. Pregnant? Emily was pregnant? And that lengthy incarceration would serve little rehabilitative purpose. Therefore, I'm sentencing you to 3 years in prison, with all but 18 months suspended. You will serve 18 months, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will also pay full restitution to your mother for all financial damages, estimated at $73,000 including legal fees, lost business income, and asset recovery costs. Finally, you will perform 500 hours of community service, specifically working with elderly populations, so that you might develop some understanding of the humanity of the people you victimized. 18 months. It felt simultaneously like too much and not enough. As they led Emily away, she looked back at me one last time. Our eyes met, and I saw everything there: regret, resentment, loss, and a desperate plea for forgiveness I couldn't give. I looked away first. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. Catherine had prepared me for this. "Mrs. Hayes, how do you feel about the sentence?" I stopped and faced the cameras. "I feel that justice was served. My daughter committed serious crimes, and she's facing appropriate consequences. But I also want to say something to other elderly people who might be in similar situations. If someone in your family is trying to have you committed, take control of your finances, or declare you incompetent, fight back. Document everything. Find an attorney who specializes in elder law. Don't just accept what family members tell you. You have rights, even if someone claims you don't." Will you ever reconcile with your daughter? I thought about that question. I don't know. Right now, I can't imagine it. What she did broke something fundamental. But I've learned that life is long and people can change. So I won't say never. I'll say not now. That night, I sat on the porch of the inn, watching the sun set over the property I'd saved. Rosa brought me tea and sat beside me. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. Did I? My daughter's in prison. My grandchild, I'd learned from the court that Emily was due in 4 months, will be born while she's incarcerated. I saved my business, but I destroyed my family. Emily destroyed your family, Rosa corrected. You just refused to let her destroy you too. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd spent too long taking responsibility for things that weren't mine to carry. 6 months after the trial, I was reviewing quarterly reports when Rosa knocked on my office door. "Margaret, there's someone here to see you. He says his name is Marcus, and he has something important to discuss." My first instinct was to refuse. But curiosity won out. Marcus looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his clothes hung poorly, and he had the haunted look of someone who'd been through hell. "Mrs. Hayes, thank you for seeing me. I know you have no reason to. Why are you here, Marcus?" He set a baby carrier on my desk. Inside was a tiny infant, maybe 6 weeks old, sleeping peacefully. "This is Owen. Your grandson. Emily gave birth in prison 3 weeks ago. She's not doing well. Emotionally. Physically. The prison doctor is concerned about postpartum depression. And His voice broke. I can't do this alone. I lost my job again. We're being evicted from our apartment. I have nowhere to go, no money, no support system." I looked at the sleeping baby. My grandson. Innocent in all of this. "What do you want from me?" "I'm not asking for money or to move in or anything like that. I want Owen to know his grandmother. The real one, not the stories Emily told. I want him to know that he comes from strength and resilience. And someday, when he's old enough to understand, I want to be able to tell him that family doesn't have to be toxic. That it's possible to overcome terrible things and still build something good." I studied Marcus. He'd been part of Emily's scheme, or at least complicit through silence. But he was also here, with a newborn, asking for a chance at something better. "I'll meet with Owen," I said carefully. "But this doesn't absolve Emily of what she did. And it doesn't mean you're welcome in my life without earning that place. Understand?" "Yes. Absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. Hayes." Thank you. He left shortly after, but the image of that sleeping baby stayed with me. That night, I called Catherine. I need your advice about something that's not legal, just personal. I'm listening. I told her about Marcus's visit, about Owen, about the confusion I felt between my justified anger and the pull of family connection. What do you think I should do? Catherine was quiet for a moment. Margaret, you've spent the past year fighting for your right to make your own decisions. Don't give that up now. If you want a relationship with your grandson, have one. If you don't. But make the choice that lets you sleep at night, not the choice that anyone else thinks you should make. Wise advice. I decided to see Owen once a month. Supervised visits with Marcus, where I could hold my grandson, watch him grow, be a small part of his life without getting entangled in the mess his parents had created. It wasn't forgiveness. It was just refusing to let Emily's crimes cost me the chance to know my grandchild. 2 years have passed since I walked out of Riverside nursing home. 2 years since I fought back against the daughter who tried to erase me. 2 years of rebuilding, not just my business, but my life. Hayes Heritage Inn is thriving. We expanded to 14 rooms last year, adding 2 luxury suites with historical details I personally researched and restored. Our occupancy rate hit 96% this past summer. We've been featured in 3 national travel magazines, and we're now training interns from a local hospitality program, young people learning the craft of making guests feel truly welcomed. I'm 70 now. My hair is completely silver, my hands have more arthritis than they used to, and I move a little slower up the stairs. But my mind is as sharp as ever, my passion for this work as strong as it was 40 years ago. Emily was released from prison 8 months ago. She's living in a halfway house, working as a night custodian at an office building, and trying to rebuild her life. We haven't spoken directly, though Marcus occasionally sends updates. She's completed her community service requirement at a senior center, and according to him, something shifted during that work. She spent 500 hours talking to elderly people, hearing their stories, learning what it feels like to be dismissed by society simply because of age. Marcus says she cries sometimes when she talks about what she did to me. Whether those tears are from genuine remorse or self-pity, I honestly don't know. I still see Owen once a month. He's 2 years old now, bright-eyed and curious, with a laugh that reminds me painfully of Emily as a child. I buy him books, take him to the park near the inn, let him help me water the garden. Marcus brings him, we spend a few hours together, and then they leave. It's enough. Not forgiveness, but connection. Not reconciliation, but relationship with a child who had no part in what his mother did. Linda Chin from Riverside calls me occasionally. After what happened, she became an advocate for nursing home residents' rights, teaching training sessions for staff on how to recognize signs of improper commitment. Marion, the woman I met at Riverside, decided to fight her own case with Catherine Walsh's help. She won. At 84, she reclaimed her house, her assets, and her dignity. She sends me Christmas cards now with pictures of her with her new friends, other elderly women who refuse to be erased. Dr. Morrison lost his medical license. 4 other families came forward after my case went public, all with similar stories of quick, inadequate evaluations that resulted in guardianship arrangements. He's currently under investigation for fraud. The Riverside nursing home itself implemented new protocols after my case, independent advocates for all new residents, mandatory second opinions for guardianship commitments, and better training for staff to recognize potential abuse. I like to think some good came from what happened to me. Last month, I did something I never thought I'd do. I wrote Emily a letter. Not because she asked, she knows better than to contact me directly, but because I realized I had things I needed to say, whether she heard them or not. Emily, I wrote. I'm not writing this to offer forgiveness or to restart our relationship. I'm writing because I've learned that carrying anger is exhausting, and I'm choosing to put it down. Not for you, but for me. What you did was unforgivable. You betrayed every bond of family, every standard of decency, every principle your father and I tried to teach you. You hurt me in ways I'll carry for the rest of my life. But I also understand now that your actions came from a place of profound brokenness. Whatever twisted thinking made you believe you had a right to steal from me, whatever jealousy or resentment drove you to imprison your own mother, those things didn't appear overnight. They were built over years of choices I didn't see you making. I'm not saying I failed you as a mother. I did the best I knew how. But clearly, somewhere along the way, you internalized messages about money and worth and family that turned toxic. And I wish I'd seen it sooner. I hope prison and the consequences you've faced have taught you something beyond just fear of punishment. I hope you've learned that people, all people, including elderly people, including your own mother, have intrinsic worth beyond what they can provide to you. That human beings deserve dignity and choice and respect, especially from their own children. I hope that when Owen grows up and asks you about what happened, you tell him the truth. Not a sanitized version, not a justification, but the actual truth, that you committed crimes against your own mother out of greed, and you paid the price. And I hope you teach him to be better than you were. I won't see you again. And that's the last power you'll ever have over my life. But I wanted you to know that I'm no longer spending my energy hating you. Real peace, the kind that comes from genuine remorse and real change, on my own terms, not from simply avoiding people who value me, doing work I love, but whether you do or not, in whatever time I have left. And that's what matters. I didn't sign it Mom or Love or anything sentimental. I just signed it Margaret Hayes. I gave the letter to Marcus to deliver, and I don't know if Emily ever read it. I haven't asked. But writing it freed something in me. The last thread of connection to the person I used to be, the mother who would have done anything for her daughter, who would have forgiven anything, who valued family above all else. I'm not that person anymore. I'm Margaret Hayes. Businesswoman. Survivor. Fighter. Advocate. Someone who refused to be erased. This morning, I stood on the porch of the inn, watching the sun rise over the property I've loved for 4 decades. A young couple who'd stayed here for their honeymoon was checking out, laughing as they loaded their car, already planning their return visit for their anniversary. Rosa came out with my morning coffee. Good news, we're fully booked for the next 6 months. The feature in Travel Plus Leisure brought in a huge wave of reservations. Wonderful. Let's make sure we hire another housekeeper. I don't want the staff overwhelmed during peak season. Already posted the listing. Also, I was thinking about your idea for the garden expansion. I spoke with the landscaper, and he thinks it's perfect. We can start in the spring. I smiled, sipping my coffee, planning for a future I almost didn't have. Because if Emily had succeeded, none of this would exist. The inn would be under her mediocre management, probably already declining as she made short-sighted decisions for quick profit. The staff would have scattered, finding new jobs under better leadership. The legacy I'd built would have been dismantled piece by piece. But I fought back. And not just for myself. For every elderly person who's ever been told they're too old, too confused, too burdensome to have a voice. For every parent who's been betrayed by a child who saw them as an obstacle rather than a person. For everyone who's been dismissed, warehoused, erased by people who should have protected them. I think about that afternoon at Riverside when I asked Sarah for paper and a pen. Such a simple request. But that request changed everything. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is write down the truth. Document it. Make it undeniable. Force people to confront what they want to ignore. I wrote down what Emily did. I wrote down dates, details, conversations, evidence. I turned my pain into a weapon that couldn't be dismissed as the confused ramblings of a senile old woman. And that letter saved my life. If there's one thing I want people to take from my story, it's this: never stop fighting for yourself. Never accept that you're too old, too weak, too powerless to demand justice. Never let anyone tell you that staying silent is easier, that going along with abuse is preferable to causing conflict. Fight. Document. Speak. Demand to be heard. Because you matter. Your life, your work, your dignity, they matter. Age doesn't diminish your worth. It doesn't erase your rights. And it absolutely doesn't give anyone, not even family, permission to control, abuse, or discard you. I'm 70 years old, and I'm living my best life. Not because everything is perfect, it's not. I still grieve the daughter I lost, the relationship that's dead, the family that could have been. But I'm free. I'm successful. I'm respected. And most importantly, I'm living on my own terms, making my own choices, controlling my own destiny. Emily tried to take that from me. She failed. And every morning when I wake up in my own home, managing my own business, surrounded by people who value me, I'm reminded that I won. Not just the legal battle. Not just the fight against improper guardianship. I won back myself. And that's the most important victory of all. So to anyone reading this, anyone facing a similar situation, anyone being told by family that they're incapable or burdensome or need to surrender their autonomy, I want you to know. You are not alone. You are not helpless. And you are absolutely worth fighting for. Ask for that paper and pen. Write down your truth. Find your advocate. Build your case. And refuse to be erased. Because your story matters. Your voice matters. Your life matters. Never let anyone convince you otherwise.